Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet. In your ear and in your laptops. Everything from poetry to poetry and more poetry. That's what we love. For episode number 295, our guest is 2024 Rattle Chapbook Prize winner, Kat Lehmann. She'll be here in about 5 minutes. But before we get in, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because you love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring that bell for notifications wherever you're watching this. And it could be iTunes, it could be Spotify, it could be YouTube, it could be Facebook. Who knows? Wherever you do, there's something you can click to help spread the poetry around, and that's all that we ask of you. So please do click that button yet if you haven't, whatever it is right now. As we're going to always do, we're going to start out with our Poets Respond poem. And this was a topic. The poet is John Savoie. And it was a really great topic because this was something a lot of people were writing about, the loss of the penny. And a wonderfully vivid poem that John was discussing with it. Here he is, John Savoie. Hey, John, how you doing?
Hi, Tim. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for being here and sharing this wonderful poem. Tell me how the poem came to be. It's one of those poems that we did get probably of the 200 poems submitted this week. It was maybe 25 or 30 poems on the penny. There's a lot of love, and mourning for the loss of the penny. But this was a wonderful poem, using such vivid imagery especially. Tell us how the poem came to be, why you decided to start writing it, and how you entered the topic.
Well, oddly, pennies mean a lot to me. They don't have much material value anymore. But for decades, I've been a numismatist amateur, and the largest amount of coins in my collection are Lincoln pennies, the old wheat pennies there. And I love the history. And of all coins, a lot of coins really don't mean much. They're just tokens of the government. They serve a purpose. But some really good coins are beautiful. Walking Liberties, Morgan dollars, some of the St. Gaudens gold pieces. And oddly enough, the most common coin of all in American coinage, the penny, has the Lincoln's face on it. And I love the expression on his face and also all the things he stood for and the gravitas, but also humility and even a sense of humor. And it's a literal poem. I do all these things here. I'm a very frugal person. I still pick up a penny, but it's become much more symbolic. And when I do, I usually think of Lincoln and how he guided the country through an extremely difficult time. We think we're divisive now. Things were really divisive 160, 170 years ago. And so I hate to see him go.
Yeah, well, definitely. It's interesting. I mean, the penny itself, I was thinking about, as we talked about, change going away, how change is sort of like a burden almost, like if you have to use cash, you get change, you're stuck with it. And then it's like in my car, it's waiting for the parking meter, it's like if there's a parking meter that still takes change, I'm like, I have this whole cup full of it. And occasionally you come across one, but that's about it. But then thinking about the connection to the past too is so important. It's really the first big break from the history and tradition of the currency that we've had. It's an interesting thing to think about. Do you want to go ahead and read the poem, Loose Change?
Sure thing. And it's goes through four stanzas, four different scenarios, and they're all literal things that I do. And the title is Loose Change, which begins literally with loose change, kind of currency you put in your pocket. And then, as you suggested, how things change and customs change, and so on. And one thing more I'll add before I get to the poem is they say that every poem in some way is about poetry, but this one really is. And that what of all the wonderful things it does is poetry helps us notice little things and to see the value in them. So here's the poem, Loose Change. I rescue scattered change, quarters, nickels, dimes, even the poorest penny, Lincoln's liquid eye pleading from a puddle, calling to the better angels of our nature. I run a foster home for stray donuts abandoned in break rooms on Friday afternoons and place them with loving families where they feel valued and thrive. I shuffle the world's last newspaper left at the gate, skim the sports, glance the op-eds, then refold it solemnly as a flag, honoring all that's past. I pocket mechanical pencils fallen between cars, laid bare in empty parking lots, miraculously uncrushed. And together we write what was nearly lost to wind and rain, to silence, time, and chance.
Yeah, so it turns into a beautiful Ars Poetica almost. That was Loose Change by John Savoie. John, thanks so much for sharing that poem with us and being the featured poet today. I really appreciate it and really love the vividness of that poem. Thanks for sharing it.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep, take care. Yeah, once again, that was John Savoie, today's poet at Rattle.com. If you'd like to participate in the Poets Response series, that's poems written after current events. All you have to do is send a poem about something that's just happened in the last week. In this case, it was all the news about getting rid of the penny out of the monetary supply. So many things we cover, politics, strange science stories, anything that comes up during the week has poetry potential inside of it. And if you unlock that potential, send it to Rattle. Go to rattle.com, find the content up there, Poets Respond, and send it in by midnight on Friday night. And yeah, you could be the Sunday poet too. And we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Kat Lehmann. So sit tight and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Kat Lehmann. Kat's winner of the 2024 Rattle Chapbook Prize and previously appeared on Rattlecast number 8 way back in 2020. That was pre-pandemic. She's the founding editor of Whiptail, Journal of the Single Line Poem. Her haiku have won the Haiku Foundation's Touchstone Award for Individual Poem and are featured in A New Resonance, Emerging Voices in English-Language Haiku from Red Moon Press. If you like a lot of what Kat's doing with her haiku, check out Red Moon Press, by the way. They publish such amazing stuff, anthologies like that were referenced just there, but so many others too. Kat also holds a BA from Hampshire College and a Ph.D. in Biochemistry from the University of Utah. She lives in Connecticut, and you can find more at katlehmann.weebly.com. Here she is, Kat Lehmann. Kat, thanks so much for being back. I always love talking to you and love your work, so it's really happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's really great to be here, and it's nice to be back, I should say.
Yeah, it's a different experience too, because as you reminded me, I kind of forget that at the early episodes, like the first 20 or 30, we had no because you can only move one camera into my processing software, so it has to be the one people see. So there was no camera that you could see. So you were talking in that episode to just a black box, or maybe like my still image of my face, and I couldn't do anything about that. But now we can actually have a conversation, which is always nice.
Yeah, this is nice. Yeah, that was a new experience for me to talk to a black screen essentially. So
yeah. Well, let's start out with we're going to read the first half of the show. I think we're going to focus on the chapbook. No matter how it ends, a bluebird song. Do you want to start out with the first chapter in that book and maybe explain a little bit about how the book came to be and what the theme is for people that haven't read it yet, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, I wanted just to give a little bit of background. So it's essentially it's about a long illness and kind of like what happened and then coming through that, to the other side of it. And so as background, I received a clinically indicated thing, and I won't say what that thing is because I don't want to say anything negative, but it was something that was clinically indicated, and I had just a a bad reaction to it. The like day I received it, I felt very weird, and so I rested, over the weekend, and then I thought, well, this is kind of silly. I'm just gonna have like a small like walk in the woods behind our house, right? And then I was on this walk, and then all of a sudden, I just felt so profoundly exhausted that I didn't know how I was going to get home, and my heart was doing strange things, and it was almost dusk, and I'm like, how am I going to get home again? And I eventually made it back, and then it just kind of went from there. And just I was in bed, like it was really hard for me to get out of bed. Just lots of things like brain fog. Was having problems finding words verbally, but thankfully I could still write and I could still read and all that. But there was weird things. At first, the first doctors I saw kind of just, literally shrugged and like, I don't know, can't help you. And I found someone who just sent me to a bunch of specialists and just sent me to everyone. And we were able to figure it out. It was dysautonomia, which is sort of like a large class of things. It includes things like POTS and long COVID. And it's a lot, but for me, it was not related to COVID. But it was a long kind of journey to where I am now. And what I like about the book is that it's sort of open enough that I've received some really amazing messages from people that have had all kinds of things, that they're struggling with, and how it speaks to them. And that's exactly what I was hoping for, because when, this kind of thing is going to happen to, most or all of us at some point, like something like this, and then, but it feels isolating. And then to have someone kind of like speak about some of the same types of experiences, it's like a hand holding. And it just really makes me feel amazing that, that this is what kind of came from it. If you're going to go through something, that's something, I want to say positive, but something, that is a connection that came from it. So that's sort of the background. Oh, and I should mention that like part of my science training was really great because I took meticulous notes about everything that was going on, and it actually ended up being really helpful to figuring out what was going on. But I'm going to start with the first chapter called Trail, which now maybe poems will have that context. Trail. 2 days after the first dose, the world falls into starlings. The whale in my limbs stranded mid-trail. The whale in my limbs stranded mid-trail. Where the trees are, my before picture. Wondering what the flying flock overhead crows. What could have been a chestful of hummingbirds? What could have been a chestful of hummingbirds? Suddenly fishless, my ocean pinned under the atmosphere. Sundown, each step Persithia forms a fence. Unlit firefly, what use am I lost in darkness? How to make it home again on earth as it is in.
Yeah, and that's the first chapter of this just wonderful memoir in haiku. And you can see how many of the monoku that you use and the way that you approach haiku, which I just think, I mean, I think you're one of the best haiku poets alive today, and it's a pleasure to have you here. What can you tell us about the way you approach these moments that you turn into haiku, and maybe just a little bit about what haiku means to you? I mean, obviously we've had many Rattlecasts already talking about how it's not a matter of counting syllables. There's more to haiku than that. And so I guess what are haiku and how do you approach writing in this form?
Yeah. In a basic, what you've already covered some of the basics, as you said, and like Rattle has been just very supportive of the haiku community and really just being a bridge for all of us. And I know we all love that. So there is there is often a seasonal reference called a kigo, but not always. I mean, it's kind of like love. You like know it when you see it kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because there's lots of these. Well, it's usually this, but not always. There is usually two parts or an evolving scene that sort of like focuses on one part and then a second part. Or it can be a juxtaposition, more an abrupt juxtaposition. One line haiku. So in Japanese, haiku are written in a single vertical line. And I don't mean to make a lot of that because it's a different language, right? But it sort of just like opens up the whole idea that we can also write that way in English. English is a very different language. What happens in English when you write in a single line is that you have the ability to have multiple breaks and multiple readings within the haiku. And I don't know if that happens in Japanese or not. I don't speak Japanese, so I can't really speak to it. But that's happens in English. And there's also something about haiku, well, the whole mystery part of haiku. You can kind of feel what is real within what seems to be impossible. There is a deeper truth within it sometimes. And it's up to the reader to kind of make that leap. It's a poem that's not finished, right? So the reader is kind of expected to bring something to it. One of the things that I personally do with my haiku. So a lot of them have a seasonal reference, right? For me, I really see myself as a part of nature. And so when I say like, a bird or a tree or something, like I am partially embodying that tree. I can kind of feel the treeness within me and the meanness within the tree. And it's kind of like, I don't see that distinction so much. So when I say suddenly fishless, my ocean pinned under the atmosphere, I mean, there was someone that once said they thought my haiku were speculative, and I don't see it that way at all. I just see it as, I don't know how else to say. I felt completely empty, and as if the whole, atmosphere was like pressing down on me, besides saying that I'm like the flat ocean without any fish in it. And that's how I feel. It's kind of like a metaphor in a way, but which is how our brains understand things. But it's sort of just like allowing myself to kind of like empathize and have that thinned boundary as I'm writing haiku.
Yeah. Do haiku have two parts pretty much universally? There's always, because there's some kind of shifting that has to go on, and to do that you end up with two parts. Did they work usually in a linear way? Like if we're looking at the haiku I'll pull it up on screen again. What could have been a chest full of hummingbirds? Is there a linear progression into your thought? Like, do you remember for that haiku, did the what could have been come first, or did it come all together? Because really the haiku is this crashing of two things into a way that's sort of startling and moving. And it's always fascinating to think about how that comes to be. So is it like you know one part and then you're trying to find the other part, or how does it work to actually get these onto the page?
Yeah, that's well, there is that the whole flow state thing, which I think is really a big part of writing any poem, but definitely of writing haiku. And I think, like, I don't remember that exact one, but there is like the whole, like, what could have been part, right, which had its own meaning. It's like a longing for something, the way it was. And then like the chest full of hummingbirds. And if you write it in the way I did, it creates misreadings too, which the and in haiku, you can misread something and create another layer of meaning. I always love it when it works out that you can have multiple readings in a way that they speak to one another, and almost creates its own, mini arc of an experience. And then you step back and you've only like used like 8 words or something, and you've done this whole big like narrative, almost this mini narrative. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the other ones here, an example. And like the first one, 2 days after the first dose, the world falls into starlings, and starlings is kind of like that. Is that like cartoony, like, someone falls and they have the stars around their head, like, there's starlings, and there's actually the murmuration of starlings, that things are kind of whooshing around. So it's drawing upon a lot of those different things.
Yeah, well, there's so much that goes into each one, and what I love about poetry, I guess this is maybe why I love haiku. But what I love about poetry is they're books. I never wanted to buy novels or other books because there's no reason to go back to them. Just get them from the library. But poetry was books that I loved to buy because you could, 10 years later you go back, or 2 weeks later you go back, and you sort of re-experience in a new way all of the little fragments of thought and experience that are there in the poem. And the haiku is that so condensed. Like, I've read these haiku. At the point of putting a chapbook together, I've read them, dozens of times, hundreds of times maybe, and they never get old because they're so tight and condensed, and there's so much of the experience put into each one. It's like a whole short story in just a few words. It's really a wonderful form. Can you talk just a little bit, and then we'll read some more, but about how you came into this form? Is that the reason why? Like what was it that did you start writing haiku before you were writing other things, or did you fall in love with haiku in the process of falling in love with writing?
No, actually, it was that I was a very avid reader of poetry. Like, I was obsessive for about 25 years or something, or 20 years. I started in graduate school, and I would just like, I'd be in the lab all day, and I come home and read poetry for another several hours, every night. And it didn't really occur to me to even write my own for a long time until like I was going through my mother had a serious mental illness, and I was going through kind of therapy for that, and realizing she was never going to get better. And when I started to write about that in my journal, it all came out as poetry. It was all just poetry. And I wrote that over 3 years, and it ended up being Moonful of Moons to like my first book. And I didn't even know that people sent individual poems off to journals first. So I just kind of like found a friend who was publishing these books, and it's like, can you help me and just publish it? So still, like, none of those have been in a journal. They're only in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And then about the same time, I was on Twitter at the time, and I was writing these little short things, and I found the haiku community through that. And it was such a at the time, a really great space for sharing really short poems, and that's sort of how I got into it. I never really had a mentor. I just really studied what everyone else was doing.
Yeah. Well, let's hear a few more poems from the book. Let's do the chapter 3 next.
Okay. This chapter, I was stuck in bed at that point. I was feeling isolated, and I felt as if like life was moving on without me, fatigue. First fern fading into the primal. Sunset window, the tree becomes my face. Beyond the bed, a lilt of voices live my former life. Seagull prints, the party held without me. Gathering dark, telling the children, I can't. Sudden rain, their giggles slipped through my hands. Fatigue days, everything to do with, etc. Outside the window frames, a Rothko, a raven. Becoming the bed, be still and know.
Yeah, there was chapter 3 from this book. No Matter How It Ends, a Bluebird's Song by Kat Lehmann, winner of the 2024 Rattle Chapbook Prize. So going through that phase, and the fatigue one, it seemed especially difficult to write when you're feeling that way. That lack of energy and motivation, it's something that's just whole body and encompassing. Did you find that the haiku form was especially, like, do you think it could have only written haiku, I guess, in that phase anyway? Is it something that like sort of saved you from not having anything to do, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and it's always true. One of the things that's great about haiku, even, when as a busy mom, like young kids and toddlers like are running around and everything, you don't have time to write anything down. You can kind of like work on it in your mind. You have like the back of your mind, you kind of are turning over like phrases and a couple words, and and you can do it almost in your mind. They're so short. And I think that bite-sizedness of it is also what helped me when I was ill, because I didn't have a lot of capacity. I wouldn't have been able to write a longer poem the way I previously had. I would not have been able to, I think, at that point. Yeah, and that the fatigue days, everything to do with, etc. It just felt like, this is happening, etc., etc. Oh, I need to do this, etc., etc. It seems like when those things happen, everything in your mind has an etc. at the end of it, or at least mine did.
Yeah. Well, it's so well captured, this whole experience. And like you said, it's something that so many people go through or will go through but haven't yet, which is one of the really most important things that literature does, is let us into these experiences that we'll be prepared for a little bit more, or understand and have empathy for. And so really wonderful book in that regard. We wanted to publish a book of haiku in the Rattle Chapbook series for a long time. And it's great to have such a wonderful story evolve. Or powerful. I don't know if wonderful is the right word, but you know what I mean. Let's hear the next set that you'd like to read. I want to make sure we get through through the book, and then talk about other stuff too. Shadow is next.
Shadow, chapter 5, and this is when I was further in the illness at this point, still not finding the answers clinically, and like wondering if I was going to die. So it's the like dark part of the book, I guess. Shadow. First diagnosis. I follow the rabbit down the familiar hole. Berry thorns, what doesn't fit the paradigm. Medical exemption, a committee of strangers votes on my life. Anonymous, my shadow follows into the autumn meadow. Sleepless, the ceiling fan pushes the dark around. Long night, a life without me. Long night, a life without me. A pine tree, I stand all day in my shadow. Departing geese, the day and time, not of my knowing. Writing our will, only two things matter.
Yeah, that's such beautiful storytelling.
Thank you.
So at what point, I imagine you were just writing, haiku, and not really thinking about what it would be. At what point did you realize that it shaped, had an arc, and became a book that told this whole story? Did you recognize that? I imagine maybe at this point, halfway through, that like you had something here to keep going. And if so, did that change the way you approached it at all?
I didn't at first. I think I was just writing to survive, really, to just as my own therapy and way of like documenting what was happening to me, and just, trying to capture those moments, even though they were awful sometimes, but just like, this happened to me, kind of thing. And that can be healing, just to put words to something. And it really wasn't, for a while that I realized I had anything. I think it was when I was, it was far enough along. I realized when I was putting together the references, that how many of them, like almost all of them, were like written in this time period. It was like, really, it was, and I realized, this is a theme here. So
there was a good question already from Dick Westheimer, who wants to know, not sure how to ask this, he says, but I hear the scientist in you coming through your discussion of your writing process. Could you reflect on and talk about that? And, you already mentioned the notes that you were taking and the way that was going through. It was, and just a moment ago, that was like a chronicle of what you were going through. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how much the scientific training that you have, which is unusual for poets, how much that influenced the way you approach being a haiku writer?
Well, like, so one of the things, I spent a lot of time making sure that my poems are like true. If they're factually true. It's like there was going to be a bee or something in it, or a certain flower. Like I actually spend like real time, reading about like bees and what's the actual name of that thing, or like what flower is it the right flower, and so to me that's really important. But yeah, but in terms of what he was saying about like writing down what was happening to me, I was so glad I had that training. It was just instinctual, like, it's like a lab notebook. Just start documenting stuff.
To me, I always think about the way that poetry and really all art comes from a sense of curiosity, I think. and science does too. It's like wanting to actually know. And the scientific method is, this sort of laborious process for actually knowing, which is very difficult to do. And then the poetry is this, I don't know, it's more like a hunch knowing, but there's like a knowing that's involved too. And it's a similar like pursuit of that understanding, even though it's understanding on a different level. And do you think that the thing that draws you into the sciences is the same thing that draws you into poetry?
It's really interesting. You know, I went to graduate school for biochemistry, and so for me, it was like that questioning why, and it seemed like, well, why? Well, there's a cell that's doing this. Well, like, how does it happen in the cell, and what is it's happening in the cell, and why is the molecules do this, and why, and then you end up with like biochemistry, and it's like, oh, that's why, that's why, and so that's how I got into biochemistry. But there still is a point where you can go even deeper, and you hear like, just and this is beyond what I studied, but just the whole quantum levels of things, right? And like the nature of gravity and all these like really, things we don't fully, can put an understanding to into that same level. And it's sort of like that's where the poetry is. It's like, it's that things you don't have words for yet and you can't fully explain. Or that seems to like, it's true, but it seems to not make the same kind of sense that you're used to. But there's still that understanding in there. And I think that's what draws me to it as well.
Yeah, would you say, asking those questions, why, eventually it's sort of like turtles all the way down, as they say, and you end up with I don't know why. Like no matter how far you go into physics and the quantum layer and stuff, and so ultimately, I do wonder if that pursuit of what reality really is sort of always leads to poetry, because there's always some why that you can't get to, and then that why you can't get to makes you push deeper into the unknown that it is. Do you think that is it, like being unsatisfied, the more you burrow down, is what draws you to poetry?
Yeah, well, it's also, I think so poetry, I think part of the importance of poetry is that it's expressing with words what cannot be expressed with words. It's kind of its own internal irony, right? It's like you're left with using words, but you're trying to express what's wordless. And that's, I think, what happens in haiku a lot are those leaps, and in haibun too, right? It's like you have that negative space. Mm-hmm. It's in that negative space that the wordless meaning exists. That is, I don't know the numbers, but it's like 10,000 words, whatever that we commonly use, or whatever the number is. It's not a huge number. It's and you think about everything that has meaning and I don't know, it's well beyond that. And so we have these really simple tools to explain this endlessness. And so I think poetry does that well. That's what poetry is doing.
Yeah, I think so. And I think haiku in particular is sort of like confining it to the petri dish. It's like so small that you can really focus on what's there. Let's do one more section from the book. Yeah.
Shake.
Yeah, sure.
7. Yeah, and this is not to like leave it all dire and hopeless. This is when I was starting to feel somewhat improved. So this is chapter 7, Shake. Gyroscope, my vertigo slows from Van Gogh to blue skies. Slow rowing in the basement lake. 1 minute, 2 more, 3. False spring, the lightening and lengthening of symptoms. Word finding, all the birds are chickadees. Word finding, all the birds are chickadees. Born a tree, how easy the river speaks. As much as I want to be still these wildflowers, as much as I want to be still these wildflowers. Morning sea, I shake the night from my wings. Second dose for Scythia with a chance of rain. Snow crocus, I unbecome my fear.
Yeah, and that last wonderful one, written up, which it takes a moment to get. That's really wonderful. So Kat, I wanted to talk a little bit about as much as I want to be still these wildflowers versus as much as I want to be still these wildflowers. That way that Monoku can sort of hinge and whip around like that. And you're the editor of Whiptail, the journal of the one-line haiku. And I always think about the way that we, as poets, we should understand and take advantage of the nuances and intricacies of our language. There's something completely different that Japanese language haiku has. One of the early guests was Richard Gilbert on the Rattlecast, who talks a lot about the way that it's not 5/7/5 because it's actually like a 7/7/7 timing structure, like music more. And so you have this like 5/7/5 length where there's that like hanging silence of like a silent rest note or something. And so you have like the energy that like that silence is filled is where the poem comes from. But we don't have that. Like we don't hear that the mora in English like we do in Japanese. But we have these weird ways that all our function words slip together and these different hinges and the way that our syntax like determines so much of meaning, I think more than most languages too. And the interesting thing about the one-line haiku is that the way we take advantage of sort of the oddity of our own, English language's reliance on syntax to find meaning, to shift meaning around. And so a lot of haiku have that hinge. Do you think for the one-line haiku that kind of play is necessary? And how much do you see of that? And does it ever get like predictable kind of in its own way too? So I'm just wondering about, because you see so many haiku in this one-line structure in English. Like, can you just talk a little bit more about that, about what works and what doesn't, and how to keep it fresh, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, for one thing, I mean, like for any poem, there has to be a reason that it's a certain structure, right? And I think sometimes someone like we'll see like a one-line haiku in a journal, and to me and like Robin Smith, my co-editor will be like that's like a 3-line haiku is put onto a single line. Like there's no reason it's on a single line, and so either because of the way you're reading it, or it's a concrete aspect, or it's the speed, it changes the speed you read it. There's a reason. I write my haiku as a single line, and then I add enjambment to make it a 3-line haiku if I think it needs it. I don't know that everyone really is thinking about it that same way, but because I think that it's easy to get into, well, this is how I write a haiku, but we always encourage everyone to step back and say, does it need that or not? Like, what does the poem want to be? And the poem is always right, it only has to work, in its own world of that one poem, like that poem, so one of the things you mentioned, the snow crocus. One of the things so it's concrete. Obviously, it's growing up, but I love the way, if you read it down, it has on there, fear my me, on us. It has, and so you could read it as, what are the things that I'm afraid of? I'm afraid about things about me or my or us, or you can kind of like, it kind of expands it, just the way that words are broken down. And then it's also concrete, and it does slow you down because you have to realize, oh, I have to read this one up.
Yeah. Can you say just anything about the way you came up with the idea, the title Whiptail? I don't know whose idea it was, but it's such a great sort of metaphor for what Monoku does. That, like, you try to get that snap, and if I don't know if anybody's tried using a whip, but like, it's not easy to get the snap of it, the tip breaking this sound barrier. You got to do it just right. And it's just such a great metaphor for what the Monoku can do.
Yeah, well, that's what means. It's a lizard name, for one thing, and so it was actually like it. We have that as our little whatever logo thing. But yeah, that's it. Just it is just the whole, like, that strong ending, I guess, to a long poem. And we actually have published one line tanka, which no one else, I think, has. I don't know if I've seen anywhere else in English, and we've even published them so long that we had to have in the issue that we're putting out in this week, we had to have one that actually is written, like on a diagonal. It's so long. So it's really fun just to push, to see what's possible. There are, of course, also one line or one word haiku. And in that case, a lot of times the juxtaposition is considered to be kind of at the end of the poem, or at the end of the word, So like the classic example is tundra, right? Put against the white page.
Yeah, there's the way that, like, cut hangs against whatever it implies, I guess, in those kind, which are great. So now we're going to move on, though, to your Haibun, which are also great. And you play, like Lou Watts, who was a guest a couple months ago. You play a lot with, concrete Haibun and different forms of just, I guess, to me, the Haibun is like a making the most of haiku. Like when you were talking at the beginning of this broadcast, you're talking about the context with which the haiku, this memoir emerged. And you get so much more access when you have that. There's a way that allowing sort of framing and space for that leap into the haiku, which is a shift, gives you so much more, I don't know, like emotional and psychological room to play with, I guess, maybe. So how long have you been writing Haibun? Was that, you mentioned finding haiku. Did you find Haibun right then too, or is that a newer development?
It was somewhat newer, I guess. I would say 2017, 2018, because my Stumbling Toward Happiness came out in 2019, so it had to be at least a year before that, I would think. I used to write prose, for just fun as well. And then I didn't even know about Haibun, and I discovered Haibun. It was like the best of all worlds. Like, are you kidding me? This is the best thing ever, So, yeah, and I do believe that the structure of Haibun is really important. I think of Haibun as sort of like a triangle in a way. The title, the body of the poem, which is usually prose, but doesn't have to be prose, and the haiku, and the meaning is somewhere in the middle of all that. It's not, none of those are really explicitly saying it. And so that really is fun to play with. And again, it's like the world of that one Haibun, like the structure only has to just to work for that one Haibun. It doesn't need to work for all Haibun. So, do you need me to read one?
Yeah. Do you want to read Category 5, which was the one in the spring issue of Rattle? And it's a great one for seeing that triangle shape, not only because it's shaped sort of triangular, but also it fits that description very well. Yeah, you want to read that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This hyphen is actually divided into 5 sections or eras, which so birth, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And you'll probably the shape is like a hurricane, and you will probably guess what hurricane. My first name is not just Cat, but you will guess from the context what it is. Category 5. She named me after the dentist's daughter, a name that means purity. But my name became a hurricane in my 20s that swallowed the city. Then her world was the hurricane that no one would mention. So I gave a name to her storm, but no one would listen. As the past tense accumulates its rain, the levee weeping and origin story, my cloud unfolds in your lap.
Yeah, so wonderful hyphen there, and you can see the structure. I mean, the category 5 has a different, it's a leap from there into the context of the poem, that the central sort of hurricane part, the past history, and then a leap too, a jump of juxtaposition in that origin story. My cloud unfolds in your lap. So, how do hyphen usually work for you? Do you Is it as holistic as the haiku are, where it's sort of just that flow state and you write a sentence and then work it into the shape, or do you sort of tend to do one part first? Like, where did you know with this one what you were doing?
I always want to start with the haiku, but it's so hard to start with a haiku and then to write the prose or the body of the poem. This was the body of the poem. It's sort of a poem as well. It's not really prose, but came first, and then the haiku, and then the category 5. And I kind of was playing around with the having origin story in the title as opposed to category 5. I'm just playing around with the 3 parts, like where the information is going to appear.
Yeah, when we talked about Hyben with Lou Watts, his emphasis is so much on that idea of having sparks between each one, which is like, so the whole Hyben is like a fractal of the haiku itself, where you have that cut, which she is calling a spark, and in that wonderful book, Hyben, A Writer's Guide, with Rich Yeomans, who's a guest coming up in a few weeks too, and we'll have Roberta Berry on again at some point, I'm sure too. But they talk about the cuts between the prose-ish section or the verse in some cases, and the haiku and the title being in the way that whole thing swirls around to create some meaning in the center. So how consciously do you think about that cut? Because so often you see just as submissions, and Lou was talking about this too in our interview for submissions editing Frog Pond, where you end up with haiku that are sort of a summary of the prose, and that if you need that kind of leap in his mind, do you feel the same way, that you need to have like a big cut between, like where it's a different time and place and energy or topic, so it's not too close?
Yeah, there has to be something that carries it to a different place or deepens it. In this case, and the title. I mean, there's so many that like we received that the title is somewhere within the prose, and it's just it's a waste of space. You have a title. The title could be anything. Like why like have it be a the same words that are within something in the prose already, or within the poem part already. It's just it's a missed opportunity, I guess. It's the way I feel about it for my own work. And so I always try to make that the title, and that's always the hardest part, is kind of with a title that can stand up to this whole like prose and this haiku, and then like a title. And actually that was one of the reasons I I chose one of the braided one that I chose, was one of the things I try to do sometimes. I try to make all three parts to be kind of similar in weight, visually as well. So it was just kind of fun.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and read that? Crossing?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a braided poem. So they're more like points of resonance. Crossing. At the house closing, we read the document that says the river might not always exist. Blackbird wind. We laugh and sign. Why would the river stop on our watch? The hazy migration. Be it now or in 50 years, we are the ones who will leave toward death. Blackbird wind, the hazy migration toward death.
Yeah, so there's Crossing by Kat Lehmann, a Haibin. And I wanted to ask about braided Haibin because I'm not sure I quite understand, to be honest, the way that if you look at how is that different than having the haiku completely at the end? I know I've seen some of your braided Haibin where they're almost like part erasure poems where the haiku, like you read through each line of the haiku as you go. And so it's sort of a structure like that. But I think here you're instead balancing each line against prose in a way. So I've always been curious. I don't know exactly how people are thinking about braided Haibin. So maybe you could talk more about that style.
Yeah. So it's So this is a form that has kind of come up. Multiple of us in the haiku community have kind of come up with it. Like we didn't realize other people were doing it, at first. With the way it occurred to me was that I finished the prose and I had the haiku, and I realized that there was kind of like each line was like speaking to part of the prose. It was like, and they kind of were like mirroring each other or like a metaphor or something for each other. And there was a conversation there. And so I kind of like, well, what if I just divide it up and put it in there? And it kind of creates more resonances. So it's like, the river might not always exist. Well, the river's movement, it is like the wind, and then the wind is like the laughter. And then there's questions about the movement, and it's not certain because it's hazy, and like when will life end? And then there's a big aha, you're talking about death, and it's kind of like a dark humor in the end. So it's like all these different, and you wouldn't get that if you just had this block of prose and then a block of haiku, two blocks. You wouldn't have all these, all these little these side conversations going on as you read through.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting to me because when you mentioned before, like that you try to get the title to be as meaningful as the haiku and the prose section, the same applies to other poems too. That the title is this opportunity, and it's so often you see where people just make the title a kind of label for what you're talking about, where it could add a whole nother layer of meaning and experience to what you're reading. And in the same way, I think the whole Haibin, why I love it, is because it's like a scaffolding. It's like a blueprint for how any poem should work. Because you can't, you need to have it be this transformative spell. You need to have it go somewhere. And, and that means starting from a different, ending in a different place than it started. And so the haiku is the sort of leap, the sense of movement. Like very often you see a poem where, you're enjoying the lines, they're evocative, there's good metaphors or images or whatever, and you're just waiting for something to happen and then nothing does. And that's sort of like the haiku or the Haibin without the haiku at the end, and that's just such a common thing to happen in a poem. And then so often too, not having the title that means anything. And really a great poem swirls with all three of those components, even if it's hidden. And then, so that's a fascinating way to look at the braided Haibin too, because really more often in poems, you're sort of braiding in that haiku twist, that's some way that the haibun is moving in a new place, that you're going from one plane of existence to another. You're sort of working that into the section too. So it's like this whole sort of like a blueprint, like it's like the plans laid out for how a poem has to work to be effective, set into something you can visually see on the page. And I wonder if your love of science is part of that too. Like it's like seeing the whole, diagram for the Krebs cycle or something and seeing how well it works. Is that part of what you love about haibun?
Yeah, well, I mean, in biochemistry, you always talk about the relationship between structure and function, right? That's really common in biochemistry, at least. And I think you really need to see that. That's how I think of the structure of haibun too. I wrote a thing in a contemporary haibun online a few years ago, how I kind of see structure as the fourth element of haibun. It's not just like, the title, the prose, and the haiku. It's the arrangement, because it really affects the meaning. It's where the resonances occur, and therefore what the meaning is. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Let's read one more haibun. We have Between the Flashes, and people can just note how the structure works with the subject matter. I think it's a great one to read while thinking about that. Yeah.
Between the flashes, propped by pillows in bed, no, the other bed, at the end of the couch, at the desk, in the corner of the bedroom, the office, the sitting rock. My fingers move over the keyboard, the notebook, the phone, writing the story, that story, the narrative I keep writing that doesn't change. Warbler window, the Y of whiskers twitches.
Yeah, so another great haibun there, and that from Modern Haiku from the autumn 2023 issue of that magazine by Kat Lehmann. At this point, I should say, if anybody has any questions for Kat, and I'm a little late on saying that, but if anybody has any questions for Kat, please do leave them in the chat windows, either on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll pass them along. Also, if you haven't yet, please do click the like button. It really helps, like I said at the very top. If you've clicked like, then more random people get to read and experience the wonder that is haiku in this case. There are twice as many people watching as have clicked like so far, which is usually the case. But when I say this, it bumps up to like 75%, and I hope that happens right now. So please do click the like button. There's a question here from Mark Grinier, who asks, there seems to be an anti-literary bent to haiku, yet I can sense a certain literariness in your work. Am I seeing something intentional? So that's an interesting question. I'm not sure exactly what he means by anti-literary, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know what he means exactly either. I think that that the people can write poetry and haiku for any number of reasons, right? Like I know a lot of people just want to write, as a meditative thing or whatever, and don't really care about if they're trying to make art from it or something, But then, so I don't know if that's what it means. Like if you write, for your own enjoyment and your own.
Maybe I'll take a guess, because I have wondered about this, and maybe there's this way that the haiku community is its own community. It's like separate. A lot of it has to do with that everybody learns this 5-7-5 nonsense, that it's syllabics in kindergarten or third grade or whenever that is, and so there's a frustration that people don't understand haiku, and so like I guess traditional publishing maybe dismisses haiku, thinking that it's just like counting syllables on your fingers, and when it's really not, and then but then there is something where it seems to me, because it's such a wonderful community, that there's a hesitance to like enter the rest of the community at the same time. of regular poetry. Like, I think, I think people sort of like that it's its own thing, and I don't blame them, because it's so much more friendly and like honest, I guess, and authentic there, because people just love haiku, and it's not this sort of like clawing, infighting, backstabbing literary world of academia, and so maybe that's kind of what he's getting at, that it's a different community outside of the normal literary concerns.
Yeah, maybe. I think that it's just, I guess I would like welcome him to, I don't know how, if he has ever like read any of our anthologies or whatever that we put out, and read like a good number of haiku, because some of them are just amazing. I mean, but I do think that not every editor, I don't know if they don't receive a lot or what it is, but it really is me. I've kind of tried to send some of my poems out in the general poetry community, and it's not easy to find spaces that are like, oh, this is, because again, it might just be like a lack of exposure, or maybe we're not submitting out there enough as much as we could. I'm kind of, would like love it if we all, as a haiku community, like, spread the word a bit more. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, to me, I don't see any division. I mean, a wonderful, haiku by Basho is just as powerful and moving as like a sonnet by Shakespeare or whatever. And contemporary wonderful poems and wonderful haiku, they work on the same exact level, doing the same exact thing, in the same ways. It's just a condensation of that and like a simplifying into like that one leap. And so I never understand why there's this division, but then I think it was going to the Haiku North America conference that made me realize that like, it's just so nicer, it's so much more friendly, without that academic world and the pressures of that. And like the, I don't know, I guess everybody just so authentically loved haiku, was trying to get better at haiku, was trying to be inventive and make their own things that weren't accidentally like riffing off other haiku, and there's just such an authenticity to it that I guess is elsewhere. So I understand why it, like, a lot of people like that it's separate, and so maybe it's better off that way, is something I wonder about.
No, I agree. It's a wonderful community. And I do say, like, in some ways, I wish we would all just submit out in the world, because I think, I guess it's so great that I feel like, everyone else is missing out in a way, and that's a good part of it. But then it is like, you don't also want what you have to change either, because it is an amazing community, and we're all very supportive of each other. It's nice.
And maybe supportive of each other is like the main thing, it's sort of like everybody working together to get better at this thing, is kind of the vibe, instead of, any kind of like zero-sum game feeling, Let's see. So I guess before I want to we're going to end on the Sudoku. I'm not sure how to say that exactly. Sudoku. Sudoku.
The homonym is intentional.
Yeah. But before we do, let me do a couple more questions, because they're relevant more to traditional haiku, I guess. Sharon Ferrante wants to know, and she's a wonderful haiku poet herself. She's had haiku sequences in Rattle, but she says, I have trouble with juxtaposition. Which comes first for you, the image or what you want to juxtapose? And then she says, I probably didn't answer that question correctly. But what, but how does that work? What comes first, the image, the original image, or the thing that you're slicing it against? Is there a progression in that? Or how do you come up with that leap, which is just so central to the form?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure I can answer it as it always happens a certain way, because at times, like the image, hits you, and it's like you're walking along and you're like, oh wow, that's such an amazing thing. And you write it down. Even sometimes you write, like half a haiku, because it's like just that image part is so strong. And then I hold it because I'm not exactly sure what all it wants to be yet, and then I'll find the other half. it probably happens that way more the other, but I don't know. I can't, it probably happens both directions, you know. I don't know if I can make an absolute statement.
Does a lot of it
Sorry.
come in like the playing with syntax? Like you kind of have like a loose, because I guess kind of how that, you know, when it kind of works occasionally for me, it feels like you have like a loose idea of like something that meant something, you know, some kind of image or concept or like connection that you can't quite articulate. And then it's like playing with the way language works that comes up with the way that the shift is and how they can actually be joined together. So is a lot of it like in the actual, but the interesting thing with haiku is that you can do it, like you said, in your head. So it's like in your car or in the shower or something, but it's like playing with the way these like concepts can fit together, like what can stretch out of the one idea that you had. Is that where it happens? Like in the editing kind of, even though it's all internal?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I think because like, you know, even after you finally have those two halves and you realize that this is what I'm trying to say, but then how do I say, like, how do I, and then sometimes you realize, oh, it has to be flipped. And then it clicks in place, or maybe it has like, and then you go through and you like remove each word, you know, and think, okay, which is the word that's kind of holding this back from clicking? And once it clicks, you kind of know it. And then there are ones that I'll have for a long time and they never seem to click. And then like, oh, you know, I'll return and I'm like, oh, you know, it was the wrong word or something or whatever. There'll be something about it that wasn't right, and it'll click.
Yeah.
But you know, just because they're short, I mean, they can take a long time to write.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look now at a whole new sort of genre, like talking about breaks and cuts and having two worlds in one breath. There are three sections swirling around in a storm. Now we have the Sudoku, which I still don't know how you do these. So do you want to maybe read one first and we'll talk about it, and then you can read the other one? Maybe is a good way to go.
Okay, that's a good idea. And like, yeah, I don't entirely know how I write them either, because just like you have to write them all at once. You have to write all 10 at once. That's how I have to do it. I have to write all 10 at once, and I can't explain that. So anyway, this one appeared in Rattle. Ocean, ancient and evolving. Lost in waves, the part of me that is sand. Mystery blooming, I return to fish castles. Sea and sky, azure white, beneath the climate we build. Melting into flowers, my skin gates another wall. The same ceaseless undertow opening another hole. Lost in mystery, sea and sky melting the same. Waves blooming, azure white, into flowers, ceaseless. The part of me I return to, beneath my skin, undertow. That is fish, the climate gates opening. Sand castles, we build another wall, another hole.
Yeah, so that was Ocean, Ancient, and Evolving from an episode or issue of Rattle not too long back, and I nominated this one, I think, for the Pushcart Prize because it's just amazing. Of course, I don't know, they didn't understand how amazing it was, I guess, but the fascinating part is that each haiku, there's 10 haiku there, and they sort of move in this interchangeable way, and yet there's not like a weak one in the bunch. You know, it's kind of like they all mean something and have a similar progression to like a chapter from no matter how it ends. You know, there's a way that they connect, but they expand where you're going to. And I have no idea how you do them. So how do you do them?
Well, so as a step back, the way I first developed them, I was just watching my daughter swim, and I was just doodling Basho's old pond haiku. I know it sounds nerdy, but that's what I was doing. And I was thinking, well, how you write it, does it create a poem in the other direction? You know, and if you say like, you know, old pond, a frog jumps into the sound of water. Well, if you line it up, maybe it's an old frog sound, and the pond is jumping into the water, which doesn't make sense. But you kind of realize, and then like I was writing it in different ways, and I thought, well, I can just make up something like this. I don't have to start with a known poem. I can write a poem that's like this. And so this is a type of multi-ku or multi-haiku. And so they don't really link and shift the way that some other haiku sequences will link and shift between them. They all are kind of about the same kind of experience. And there's a title that it is unifying. So, and I call it Sudoku, and it's based on the, the physical, like the math puzzle, right? The way it's spelled, but I didn't know if how these were going to be received in the haiku community when I first did them. So I thought, well, I'm just going to call them a Sudoku, and then so I'm like, I'm saying it before anyone else. And it was also partially Marlene Mountain, who was a haiku poet. She wrote these haiku that were called unallowed haiku, UNALOUD, which is, she said the pun for unallowed, UNALLOWED, was intentional. Mm-hmm. It was sort of just this experiment that she had done with these words as that hold the meaning within themselves, like a frog is jumping, that the word frog jumping kind of thing. And so those were the unallowed haiku. I'm not explaining that very well. Anyway, so the question though is the meaning in the words or in the syntax? And it's like, how do you interweave 10 poems with the same words and have, like, are they going to say the same thing? I mean, like with like Basho's poem, you ended up with something that said something different, but with this, it's kind of like you're talking about a unified experience. And, so that was sort of the question, is how these are going to speak to each other, how these poems are going to speak to each other when they're using the same words, but a different order.
Yeah, well, that's just so interesting. And there was a question earlier from Amanda Harris, which kind of applies here. She was talking about the snow crocus poem being read up. But she says, how do you let the editor know when a poem is meant to be read up from the bottom? And just in general, too, like for sending something like a Sudoku, which is no one's ever written before, is there any advice you have for how to approach an editor? Because you want to let us know, I guess, but you don't want to be insulting at the same time. So, do you have any, more than anybody else, you probably have experience with that, of sending, unusual things that you've invented to editors. So do you have any advice for that for Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I don't usually explain it at all. Like, I don't say it's read up. I think when I receive a poem, I really try to spend time and figure out, like, what are they trying to do, and so I think a careful editor will. I mean, it's not that unusual, I think, to read in different ways in the haiku community. I mean, I'm not the only one that's done that, but so I think, like, a lot of editors would pick up on that, at least within the community. With the Sudoku, I think I did say, hey, I invented this form, and this is what it is. I didn't just throw it out there. But actually, as an aside, I will have 10 of these in a mini chap this summer with a Ghost City Press with their summer series, and it'll be like a free download.
Yeah, well, that's pretty exciting. So everybody can check that out when it comes out, and follow you on. I think Blue Sky is where you're most active right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's Songs of Cat, I think, right? Still.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So follow that, and they can find when it comes out from Ghost City Press. Along those lines, I would say, I think that just for some advice, to if you had 5 haiku that you were submitting, for example, that were all read up, as an editor, I would say, fear me become, this person is just, they have no idea what they're doing. Okay, they're sending gibberish. But if you have, if you put it in the middle of some more traditional stuff that you read in the right direction, then you're like, oh, this person is good. They know what they're doing. I'm going to sit here and try to figure out what's going on with this strange one. And I think that would be my advice. Just as an aside, that you surround it with some stuff that show what you're doing, and then we'll have a lot more faith in spending time with what you're doing. Because if you said this, I would do that. I would say, fear my me, what? And then I'd say, oh, snow, because and that's exactly what you do when you encounter the poem in Modern Haiku or wherever this was. That you think, what is this? Oh, that's what it is. And I think because it's published in a magazine, it gives the sense that there's some meaning there to unlock, but as a submission, you don't know that until you see some other signs of life, as it were. So I think that would be my advice.
That actually is totally fair what you just said there. And part of it too is that the haiku community is small. So I mean, and first of all, I do send a mix. I don't just send beautiful monsters, as I call them, with each one. But at the same time, after a while, you do kind of get to know who's going to send probably what kinds of things as well,
Yeah. So we'll close out with the last Sudoku. How long do these take to write? That's the thing. You said because you just said earlier that you write them sort of in one time, like in one sitting. Is it like, or all together, or how long do they take though? It seems so difficult.
Yeah, not always. Ocean, Ancient, and Evolving, I wrote while I was sitting on a beach. It was actually the second I ever wrote, and I loved it. I kind of wanted to wait for something special, so it ended up in Rattle. I kind of was holding on to it, trying to decide like what I wanted to do with that one. But I wrote it over the course of like an hour or two, just sitting at the beach one day. Some of them take months, many months. That's really unusual. Like I've even had some like a year or more, and you kind of just put it aside, and you return to it, and you're like, it's still like, that one or that one, that row in that column still don't work, and it's not right yet. But I've noticed I cannot start with a strong haiku. They all have to give a little bit. They all have to play nice together. So that's sort of
like there can't be, it's like a little basketball team and they can't have a ball hog. They need
exactly.
they need to share.
Exactly right.
So another thing, I wanted to ask, is there a reason, do you think, why 5x5 box works the best? And I don't know, I don't know what Sudoku, I've never really played with that. Is that 5x5 too? Or is there a reason within like the haiku structure that 5 works? Because you might think that like 3x3 would work, given that they're usually 3 lines in English. Is there a reason why 5x5 is better than 6x6 or 4x4 or 3x3?
I have written all of those.
Okay.
I've written, so a 5x5 though is nice because it's stretched out enough. You can kind of get more interesting variations of the different individual poems. A 3x3, I had the same thought, like, well, it's just, tercets in every direction, right? But then it ends up being like you're using the same, phrases and fragments. It's like kind of, it's harder to make it, I think, quite as interesting. And the 4x4 is sort of, in the middle of that. I've also just written them with like weird ones where things were hanging off the edges and stuff too. So
I would say too, I think 5x5 is the most you could fit on a standard page of a literary magazine, which is helpful too. It's just another bonus. All right. Well, we're sort of past time, but it's been so fun talking to you. I love the forums and all you do playing with it, Kat. Do you want to close out with this last I can't say that word right. Sudoku. How do you say it?
Sudoku. As if it's PSEUDO, but it's just SUDO, as in a Sudoku puzzle. So.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll remember it that way. Sudoku. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear it.
All right. Swallowing autumn. Following the sun into winter, the inner spinning axis. Crescent moon dreams, the kissing of midnight politics. Another trip, leaving a narrative to chase the wind. Into withering, I eat what becomes silenced. Lost horizon, a star empty of sky. Following a crescent moon, another trip into loss. Sun dreams, leaving a withering horizon. Into winter, the kissing narrative, I eat a star. The inner spinning of midnight to chase what becomes empty. Axis politics, the wind silenced of sky.
Yeah, that was wonderful. That is a Sudoku, A Swallowing Autumn from Kat Lehmann. And you can find that in the forthcoming book, To Wade Through the Night, or To Wade Through the Wind as a Night, from Ghost City Press, coming out this summer. Kat, so fun, like I said, talking to you about all the different ways you experiment and play and push form. Really fun, and loved your chapbook too. It was so moving to read. And we really appreciate getting the chance to publish great haiku as part of our chapbook series. So thanks for submitting it and for writing it in the first place. And so glad it had a turn, to the positive at the end too, which would have been really, really sad otherwise. So great to hear that too, Kat.
Yeah, thank you for everything. This has been really fun.
Yeah, it really definitely has. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so once again, that was Kat Lehmann. You can find, like we said, To Wade Through the Wind as a Night is the new book of Sudoku coming out from Ghost City Press this summer. Find, no matter how it ends, the Bluebird Song, the Rattle Chapbook Prize winner. Go to rattle.com to find that. If you were a subscriber in the spring, you would have got a copy for free. That's why it's worth it to subscribe to Rattle, because you get free, wonderful chapbooks along with your submission too. To find all of Kat's work, go to her website, which is Kat Lehmann. That's KATLEHMANN.weebly, WEEBLY.com. KatLehmann.weebly.com to find all of her work, including the new books, older books that we talked about before. You can also check out that original Rattlecast, or number 8, if you need more Kat. And in the meantime, though, sit tight. We're going to go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was this: write a postcard poem to someone that would be very surprised to hear from you. That is the prompt for this week. Now, if you'd like to share it, only if you have a poem for this prompt, email it to promptlines, all one word. That's promptlines@rattle.com. And then find the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on YouTube and Facebook. Join the Zoom, but only if you have a poem you'd like to share that fits this prompt. If you just want to sit back and enjoy the poems, the best thing to do is stay right where you are. I'm going to remind everybody that the max time on camera should be about 3 minutes, and it's a one-page max for poems, but these are postcard poems. They should fit on a postcard in theory, and so it shouldn't be too long anyway. And sit tight. We're going to be right back with a whole bunch more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. We got our poems editor, associate editor, and I'm my wife, Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
Hey, I love that conversation. Obviously, I was going to hearing you and Kat Lehmann talk about haiku and Ivan. It's like I could just do it all day. It was wonderful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, Kat Lehmann, one of our favorite poets, really, is a haiku poet. People don't get much better than Kat Lehmann.
Yeah, she's always pushing it and always making it really interesting and isn't content to just write good poems. She's always pushing for that excellent poem. So big inspiration to me. Especially I love I'm sorry, I won't go on and on, but I love the discussion about like a narrative arc within the different readings of a haiku and how like my goal is always to have like, I'm not content with 2, I want as many as I can get in there. So
yeah. Well, definitely. It is like, just the whole haiku community really is so inspiring as far as like just trying to get actually better.
Yeah.
And so people like Lou Watts and Kat and Roberta Beery and people like that just keep pushing themselves farther and farther.
And they keep reading
really
everyone's poems.
They do.
Which I think is a
too.
big important part of it.
Yeah.
Everybody reads.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess maybe the fact that they're tiny very often makes it
It
easier.
is a little easier, but still, we can do better.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so the prompt for this week was here we go, put it on screen. It was to write a postcard poem to someone that would be very surprised to hear from you.
I know there was some controversy about this prompt in the Facebook group, but hopefully everybody got there in the end.
So the question, what is a postcard poem, I guess, comes up. Maybe.
Apparently it did.
So a postcard poem is a poem that would fit on a postcard.
Yeah.
I think part of the confusion is we had a postcard poems issue,
Right.
which had to do with the postcard poetry project, which is slightly different, although really not. I mean, I'll talk about it a little bit, but Polly Nelson, it's a wonderful project, but what you do is basically you gather up over the course of the year, is there 30 days in August or 31? 31. I guess you add up 31 postcards, and then every day in August, and he gives you a list of addresses. And if you participate, you send a postcard with a poem on it every day, and then you get a postcard with a poem every day. It's a really wonderful project, still going on, and it just fills August with poetry. And his thing is to write just as quickly as he can and not like stress about it too much, I guess.
That's what I do all the time anyway.
So that fits.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that is postcard, but a postcard poem. I mentioned I love Wynn Cooper's book, Postcards from the Interior. There's another book of postcard poems. I can't remember the name of the poet, but we published one of them in Rattle, like in issue number 24, if you want to dig way back. But I can't remember what it's called or the poet's name. So find that issue.
Well, this will clear up the confusion.
It definitely does. But anyway, so what did you do with your postcard poet? Who did you pick and how did you approach it?
Well, I approached it because it is your birthday week, and I dug into my old French culinary school recipes, which sounds way more poetic than it was. It's all in an email. But anyway, and then very quickly wrote this poem. And you can tell I wrote it quickly because I hate the fact, having reread it once before coming on, that I have a word that appears in both the haiku or the monoku at the end and in the poem. So I will edit that. That's okay. I can get the white out for this postcard.
Okay.
Postcard. Today I pressed a pâté sucré shell into a cold tart pan, pricked it all over with a fork, while from the open window I heard a distant violin murraying the sky. From time to time I still dream in French. After all, egg whites are just a whip away from becoming a soufflé. In this lemon curd moment, with yellow zest under my nails, I bake myself all the way back to Paris. Cold butter sunrise.
Oh, that's great. And I cannot wait for my lemon tart.
Well, you won't have to wait that long because while you and Kat were talking, I was making those things in the kitchen, and I legit have, I'm sure, lemon zest under my fingernails now. So I liked putting it in the form of a postcard was fun because it was only kind of in doing that I realized that it's a way to turn the monoku at the end into like the signature. And so it becomes another cut because I'm also saying I am the cold butter sunrise.
Oh, that's really...
So
yeah.
I thought it was fun.
Very cool. Yeah, you could write a whole series of these.
Yeah, I also felt bad because my mom always sends me postcards. So she would be very surprised to get a postcard from me too, even though she shouldn't be because she sends them to me all the time, which is sweet.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, well, that was great. I love that. And great
Thanks.
Hyben too. And everybody now, after experiencing some Hyben before, knows what Hyben actually are. Hopefully, because geez, we've tried.
It does feel like at this point
Yeah.
we should be game. Yeah.
Okay, so and so mine, I went with this, and so for me, so the challenge of this was to think of like who'd be fun to write about
Right.
that would be like unexpected to hear
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
And that was difficult. I was having trouble like figuring out like thinking of a person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember at the very end with like 20 minutes or 30 minutes to go before I had to start talking to Kat, that I just run with it. It's something.
Good.
And so I took the Paul E. Nelson path. And his thing for the whole postcard project, and you can go back, that's episode or issue 64 maybe of Rattle, was that, or 68? But you can find that episode or issue. It's confusing, episodes,
Yeah.
issues. And he is really like a first thought, best thought thing. And the whole
Yeah.
reason he did this postcard poetry product is he thought that people were like agonizing over their poems so much. And
Yeah, it's
just
a
like,
real
write some
problem.
damn
Just write it
poems. Just
down.
like-
I wrote mine in 5 minutes. Like, just write
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
And so he really stresses like you put your postcard in the typewriter and you just crank something out and you send it off every day. And it's like a project to like not worry about it. So I decided to do the same thing. And for my topic, I picked this, which was an interesting event that happened to us just last night or 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago, however many days. It's hard to keep track.
It's hard to keep track.
It was this. This is postcard to the woman who explained she has seizures when she's sad. And so we were on a flight back from Phoenix on Thursday night, however many days ago that was. And the woman sitting next to me had a grand mal seizure right there out of nowhere.
I feel the need to say that I was sitting by Lizzie and Charlotte, and it was a row of 3. We do sit by each other on the airplane whenever possible.
We normally would.
We
yeah.
normally would.
Katie was
Yeah.
and Lizzie and Charlotte
Yeah,
were
'cause
to my right.
Yeah.
There's an empty seat because it wasn't a full flight, and
Yeah.
then this
Yeah.
woman. And I don't know. So I just
Yeah.
took that as a title and then like wrote it. So
Yeah.
here we go. And it fits on a postcard. So it fits all the rules. Okay.
Yes. Okay, good. I'm
Okay,
pleased.
postcard to the woman who explained she has seizures when she's sad. You laughed first from the window seat, which was odd, awakening from a full sleep into a spirited giggle. You laughed again and raised one arm straight up like a school child who knew the answer, and that's when it began, a heavy tremor against the plastic porthole. I held your soft cheek in my palm, it was all I had, and tipped your head forward so you wouldn't choke. Later, the flight attendant asked if I knew you, if I was a friend, and in that moment I was. All of us, the doctor on board, the nurse who kept checking your pulse, all of us were, and you have them. And
Yeah.
a little note.
I also have to say that he reacted extremely well to this happening, and the woman was lucky she was sitting by you
Oh, well, that's sweet.
you really knew what to do as well as you possibly could have. So
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to put that into a postcard poem because I would have gone a lot farther, but
Right.
having the limit on space, I had to cut to what was the heart of what, and that's what she said. She was like, she stopped taking her medication, but she has seizures when she's sad, which was a very, poignant thing to say. And she did seem sad just all together before and after too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's what I would say to her, I guess, if I got to send her a note. Anyway. Let's go first to Carla Schwartz.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, yeah. Great to see you and hear. Hey, Carla, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's great to be here. I actually wrote 2, but I'm only obviously doing 1 tonight. My other one was a triolet, I think, very short. But this one is called This Postcard Instead.
Okay.
2 miles from your last known address, the Winooski was roaring. A day in April that could have been July. So hot, I had only sweat to give. I'd been planning this for years. One day I would be alone in Montpelier and walk up to your house. And there I was. The ride up would have been steep. Is that what kept me from knocking on your door? That and the heat? What is it about knowing someone from the age of 13 that gives anyone the right? P.S. I love you. Addressee unknown.
No, that's a very sweet poem. Yeah.
I love using the PS as a monoku. That's so great. 'Cause, like every monoku is kind of like a PS. That's great.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and I loved the interview tonight. It was really, really, really cool. So thank you so much, everybody. Look
Great.
forward to
Well,
the
thanks
rest.
so much, Carly. Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, great creative use of the prompt.
Yeah.
Carla Schwartz with this postcard instead. Next, let's go to Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, Jared. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, I had a hard time finding someone I wanted to write to. But this is a postcard for the future. Jared, I'm sure this comes as a surprise. I'm you 1 month from now. Don't ask me to explain. You'll have a problem with the kitchen drain, so be prepared for that. Don't let it screw up your whole day. Just call a plumber. Do your ethics credits, pay your bar fees, feign interest whenever Linda tells mundane stories from Facebook. Take Benjamin to the zoo. He won't be young forever. On Saturday, get the brisket, not the ribs or burnt ends. Stop keeping up with news. Don't let blowhards tell you how to feel. Nothing depends on you knowing about it. Oh, on Tuesday, don't forget the milk. Also, buy postcards.
Well, that is great. I always love what you send, Jared, the creative places you go and the humor that you do it with. And too, like this, the theme, the postcard poem, there's like such an intimacy to it. Like thinking of it just as the poem being on a postcard, like makes it, I don't know, just so much more.
It makes it more tactile and like you want to engage your senses more is what I was hoping.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, it's true.
You know, Jared, too, have you heard there's this thing called Future Me, like a website where you can send yourself emails so you could send this poem to yourself in a month and do it right now and you'll get it in a month. I think you should.
It would be going in the opposite direction.
Oh, right. Yeah, you can't do it.
Can't do it yet. Although
this way
eventually
is much harder.
we'll discover time travel.
Yeah, and then we'll
go
be able
backwards.
to.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
And Jared Carroll with Postcard from the Future.
And me misunderstanding how time works on a very fundamental
I mean,
level.
on a physics level, it could go either way. You know?
I'm unconvinced that time's
there's really
linear.
no reason for the arrow of time to be
so I didn't
unidirectional.
make an embarrassing gaffe. Okay.
All right. Let's go to Dick Westheimer next.
Hey, all.
Hey, Dick. Great to see you.
I could have written one of you a postcard. You wouldn't have expected a postcard from me, would you?
No, that would have been a surprise.
Would
too,
not
but-
have.
I should have, if I would have done it early in the week, I could have mailed it to you.
Wow.
I mean, this is just
That
like,
would have been next level. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Well, it's
yeah,
the
I'm
thought
just
that
thinking
counts.
of it now. Do the prompt again, Katie.
Yes. Repeat.
Well, I was motivated by Katie's post on Facebook to do a little graphic thing too. So you can either post the graphic one I sent you or the other. But it was just
Definitely the
fun to
graphic.
play.
And I was not an overachiever, as you noticed, and just put it in text.
Well,
Wah, wah, wah. No, I'm just kidding. I just thought it would be fun. It
Oh
was
my
not
goodness.
Any pressure
Tim.
to do it.
Oh, Tim Overachiever Green. That's your. So anyway, I'll read it from my copy. But if you want to put up the graphic one,
Yeah, I've got it here.
okay. Dear God of my ancestors, who would never expect to hear from me. I've mumbled Hebrew prayers at you before, but I thought I'd write this time. I'd like to say, wish you were here, here being the center of the universe, galaxy GNZ11, Chicago, that pinched nerve in my butt that makes my thigh feel like it's on fire, the hollow of my lover's back right above her hip. What I am saying is, when I intone Baruch Atah Adonai, it has nothing to do with you. I'm just trying to feel the beat of the breaths of the old ones, hear the ringing of bells in distant galaxies. Recall that I am not the only one with a burning nerve. So I'm glad you're not here, or else I'd be distracted from the real work of being alive at the center of the universe. Sincerely, me and everything else, everywhere I look.
Well, that's great. And again, like with Jared's, the intimacy of that is like so different than, just a regular poem. Like there's something about the postcard form that makes it
Yeah,
feel
because
really,
originally I was
personal
thinking of
and-
a letter, and then I thought, postcards are more interesting.
Yeah.
I want a postcard, which I did
and
not
every-
get from Dick Westheimer this week, physically at least.
Well, I am sorry. I just did not have the imagination and time to do it. But
Yeah.
if you ever do the prompt again, you'll get one.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, great choice too. The Dear God of My Ancestors.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
very
that
creative.
topic. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Dick.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks.
y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, it's that. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe part of it is the, knowing who's being spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to it being a short, condensed poem, those are the two things that make them really
Well,
work.
and the fact that it's out there for the mail too, I think is kind of interesting. Like somebody could hypothetically read it and like.
That's true.
You
Although
know?
my friend at the NSA says to treat all emails like postcards. That was his big advice because anybody could be reading it.
That makes me like emails more.
Yeah, seriously. Somebody there could be, flipping through. He's bored reading your emails. All right. Let's go next to Amanda Harris.
All right. So I had a lot of fun with this prompt. And by the way, very, very lovely interview. And I could relate to a lot of it.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. Yeah.
Yep. All right. For Ted Hughes, life is earth on hell. The boys disobey as if disobedience were a sport and sport were a form of disobedience. Every day the floor tangles itself in mess. I sweep what the eye can see, but know that terror is sometimes blind. The last time you came, you tipped a glass and teased me into dancing with you. Sylvia would say that you kissed me insane. The sky tipped. Grass bowed to our star-stung toes. Love like disorder can be intoxicating.
Oh, that's great. As I always love the twists and turns of that. I love that
Yeah.
as if disobedience were a sport and sport were
Yeah.
a form of disobedience.
Yeah, I love it how you fold things onto. I'm like in pastry mode because I was just making this pastry, so I'm thinking of like folding a pastry because it
Right.
is so interesting how you do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Very
Thanks,
cool.
Amanda.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah,
Bye.
thanks, Amanda. It was Amanda Harris with for Ted Hughes.
I could bang out like a pastry metaphor for everything
think
now.
you can.
It like
You're-
really got me in because I have not made lemon curd since like culinary school.
Oh, yeah?
And it's really good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't wait. Okay. Let's go next to Kimberly Gibson Trant.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, Kimberly, great to see you.
Yeah. So I did attempt to put mine visually on a postcard, but I don't know if it'll turn out. It was being wonky in Word. I should have
No,
made
it
it a
works
PDF.
great in our.
Looks good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. So we
Um,
have
and
that.
I
You
was
could even print it out and
thinking-
send it too.
Yeah, you're ready to go. You just need the stamp.
It's an actual, like, I was searching. I already had the idea for the poem, and I was like going and searching for the image, because I feel like, I don't know, a postcard poem for me could be like an ekphrastic. Like when I pick out postcards, it's something to do with the image on it. So I wanted to connect that a little bit. So my title is kind of like, I'm sort of making a new title for the image here. And it is an actual postcard you can buy on a website. So I don't really own the rights to this. Sorry.
That's okay.
But anyway, I wrote to my little niece, and when you're two, I guess everything surprises you.
Yeah.
So, sundown on the Corythosaurus. Dear Sophie, everything surprises. You're turning 2, entering the tyrant years with full Jurassic force in the same jungle I grew up in. We repeat our orbits. Your face repeats my sister's. It was hard holding the plush velvet squish of you to imagine you'd unfurl and stomp the earth. That's what I do in your strange future. This sundown light so gentle, you wouldn't believe the nights drawn down by fire. Sorry, I'll miss it, Aunt Kimmy.
Oh, well, great use of like turning that into an extended metaphor
Yeah,
through the
really
image.
neat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing
Thanks.
that, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Kimberly Gibson Tran with a Sundown on the Corythosaurus, which Charlotte might like to learn.
Yes, Charlotte likes her dinosaur.
And interesting to mention, too, about the postcards and whatnot. You know, it is fair use, right? To use, you know, we're expanding on that. We can talk about that more. We did on the Poetry Space podcast. If you'd like to learn more about copyright and fair use, check out our last episode of that one.
And then the next episode on Friday.
And the next episode where we actually talk about fair use. Yeah. So in the first half, we talked about copyright law and author contracts.
Yeah.
It's just, it seems dry, but thanks to...
I was prepared for it to be one episode, guys. I'm not going to lie, but we turned into two because I thought the content was there. So
yeah. Well, anyways,
thanks to Tim, I wasn't providing much of it.
Where you get your podcast. It's a very educational one, but you can learn about how using a postcard that way would be fair use. Also, you know, the reason why Paulie Nelson, I should say, wanted a postcards as his project and his vision was like if you couldn't think of what to write about, you could just make it a phrastic, you know. And
you
so like
you always have something to go on.
Yeah, so like you could write out something in your day or like what you were like, thinking about to this random stranger, or you could write about the image on the back. And he likes to make his own postcards too, out of collages, and he puts things together and stuff. But yeah, it's a fun issue. If you want to look back at that, he was on the Rattlecast too, I think. I'm sure he was. I can't really remember, but he probably was. No, I'm sure he was. And so check that out.
But that's how I feel about Hyben too. You always just have permission, given the travelogue roots, to write about literally anything and turn it into a poem.
Yeah. Well, way to make my rambling relevant. Okay. All right. Let's move on to Zachary May.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Great to see you again. Thanks for coming back, Zachary.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here. So I kind of went the opposite of Jared, and I wrote a postcard to myself in the past.
In the past? All right.
Nice.
Well, interesting. Nice. Okay.
All right, this is, hey me, I'm here writing live from 5 years after the end of your world. Life's a whirlwind. The doctor's visits, locked and curved feet, nerves burning, swollen knuckles like two rocks grinding, flaking off bits of bone. Aching, you can't even pick up your toddler, let alone your horn. I'm here to say, you will play again. Love, you.
Oh, that's great, Zachary. Yeah, so glad and so relevant to what Kat was going through too in those poems this week. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, really moving.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Zachary. And it was Zachary May with Hey Me. I like the title too.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Also could be like a pop song
title.
Hey
It's going to be in like 2 weeks now. Like AI heard that and cranking it out.
I hope AI heard it. I want the song.
All right. Let's go to Jeff Stempo next.
Hey, y'all. How you doing?
Hey, great. Great to see you.
So, quick note about postcard poems and a quick note about what I did and then the poem. There is a journal called Hoot that publishes postcard poems every month and mails them out to its subscribers.
Oh, that's really
so they turn your poem into a postcard and send them out.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's a great idea.
I want to submit there. That sounds really, really awesome.
It does. I'm glad someone's doing that. Actually, that's an idea I thought of at one point.
And it's called Hoot.
Remember when we went and there's that Post Secret? There's that project that we went to the museum.
Oh yeah.
You know.
With the
I was thinking how cool it would be because postcards are so cheap to mail.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So if you had a monthly postcard as a literary magazine.
Well, maybe I...
Yeah. Well, they are doing it at Hoot, though. So I'm glad
I can't steal that. And they already have the perfect name also. Hoot, it's like
probably
adorable.
Like for bulk postcard mailing, it's like 8 cents, 9 cents, something like that. It's amazing. Yeah. Anyway.
So check them out. It's a cool little project.
Great. Yeah, that definitely
and then my brief shout out is to my friend Trevor, who, when I told him what I wanted to do with this, that I had to write it by hand because of the dashes. He's like, I'm going to whip this up for you so that you can print out a postcard.
Oh, awesome. How cool.
All right. Well, let's see.
I'd address you, dearest Emily, but fear my own presumption. In truth, you know me not. I've imagined this conjunction. Our words have only flowed from your letters to mine, for despite all of your influence, we both are bound by time.
Oh, that's great.
That's really wonderful.
Really
I love that.
In the Emily Dickinson style.
Oh, that's great. I'm such an Emily Dickinson fan, and I love that. And your friend helped you with the actual postcard. It looks like an old, like it looks great. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really
He's
does.
a graphic designer for,
All
Well, thanks, Jeff. That was really neat. I was really
Jill.
hoping somebody would handwrite their poem, honestly. So I'm thrilled on that
And with
level.
Dickinson, you have to because of the dashes. So.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Jeff. It's Jeff Stumpo with, this is Untitled. I had to address
Well,
you.
it's Emily Dickinson.
Well, there you go. Yeah, you can't. Okay. Next up is Christiana Doucette.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Christiana. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. Before I read mine, I wanted to say there's another literary magazine that I don't know if it's considered a literary magazine because it's a postcard, does poetry postcards as well. And that's Red Flag Literary.
Really? Wow. There's multiple.
Yeah, I used to subscribe to them actually, like
Really?
a couple
I
of years
didn't
ago.
know
It was
that.
really
Red Flag
cool.
Poetry,
Yeah,
not
Red
Red
Flag
Flag
Poetry,
Literary.
and they send out the cards.
But if
yeah.
you're submitting there, their open submissions close tonight. So
Oh, wow.
when you log off, go jump over there and send your postcard poem.
Oh, very
That
cool.
is very active. That's
That's
a hot tip.
That is a hot.
Yeah,
That's a great
nice.
suggestion. Yeah. I mean, we have a few hours to go.
Yeah.
And we have postcard poems.
Yeah.
I've
And
heard.
we have simultaneous submissions.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
So,
Well, very cool. Yeah. Thanks for that tip.
Yeah. I sent you guys a second submission because I went back and I made it into a postcard with the image. Does that show up for you?
It does. Yeah, I see that. So we have
Awesome.
Minneapolis is the one
Yes.
side. I'll put that on screen.
So
yeah.
we lived in Minneapolis for about 3 years, and we had a really great neighbor across the road. He was recently immigrated from Nigeria, and he was just awesome, a great guy. He and my husband got along so well, and then his dog was stolen, and they decided it was not good, and they were going to move. And it was a rougher area, like a drive-by happened just 2 doors down from us. We had there was a murder that happened within sight of our door. So it was a rough area, and I understand, but we miss him because he was awesome.
Yeah.
So this is to our Nigerian neighbor in North Minneapolis. And I think the reason that this even came to me this week of all weeks is just there's so much going on in the news right now with how many people are having their legal status revoked and being ejected, and it just makes me heartsick. So, to our Nigerian neighbor in North Minneapolis. I understand why you left once they stole your white dog. How building and rebuilding a life after loss leaves empty gilding. How what cannot be regained is a hole in the foundation of safety you sought. We met you after that gang slashed our tires. You shared a taxi to the tire suppliers. Together installed the new wheels bought. Then every evening, thick as thieves, you built at our house or yours. You and my husband passing jokes and tools, eating the dozen cookies I baked, the southern sweet tea spilt and laughed over. A drug dealer bought it, the house the two of you fixed up. He sent the boys next door out with baggies, misspent funds, and disappeared. A drive-by shot it on their way 2 doors down. I understand why you left, but I wish we were neighbors now. I hope you found a home your labors stick with a new dog and safety as planned.
Well, great. Yeah, another wonderful poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Christiana. Great
Thanks.
story and well done postcard poem. Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to say it's in envelope verse.
Envelope verse. I'd never heard of that.
Yes. So I guess it's an envelope stanza where it's rhymes the first and the last, and then there's like a rhyming couplet in the middle. I thought
neat.
I was looking through and I was like, hey, it's a postcard.
Well, that's
There's
pretty
no
cool.
envelope on
that's really
postcards,
cute.
but there's an
I've
envelope
seen-
on this
yeah,
one.
That's right. I've seen that form, but I
That's
didn't know that's
funny.
what it was called. Yeah, very cool. Well, thanks for teaching me too. Thanks, Christiana. It was Christiana Doucette with To Our Nigerian Neighbor in North Minneapolis.
That's really cute, the envelope stanza.
I
So
know.
cool.
I never knew that. Okay.
That's neat.
Let's go to Mike Bales next.
Good evening.
Hey, Mike, great to see you.
I love that last poem, Swallowing Autumn. It's kind of hard for me to follow, but she did it great.
Yeah.
I think you can say a lot with that poem. I did too, to literary figures. Joyce Carol Oates once had a whole book of short stories based on different literary figures.
Uh-huh.
One of the ones I wrote was to a literary figure I met, but this one's to James Tate. You probably need a big postcard for this. It's prose poemish like James Tate did.
I think it would fit for sure. Yeah.
Dear James, I call out down the stairs that a cat is sitting next to me as I write a poem. My roommate says that he fed the cat, but is looking for something more. You fed the cat, I say. What more could he need? And I pet the cat's head. He needs some intellectual stimulation, he says. Read to him. Should I read the poem I'm writing? I call out. Yes, yes, my roommate says. Read between the lines. The cat runs and hides in my bedroom. Is this real? I ask. I tell my roommate that a groundhog just ran through the yard. No, it can't be a groundhog, he says. It must be another cat. I'm telling you, James, if I say spring, he'll say summer. That is why I'm writing. I think you'll understand. Did your wife ever see the rabbit you claimed was in your den?
That's great. Well, I love the humor in that, and again, the directness to James Tate really makes it work.
Yeah, and the use of questions. I don't think anyone else has had a question in their poem yet, and that's interesting. Like, I love the ideal nature of I'm gonna write a question in a postcard and wait to hear back. So earnest and sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's neat.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, there's Mike Bales with Dear James. Next up is Nancy Tennell.
Well, what a perfect segue, because my postcard poem is one big question.
Yay, great.
Oh, that's great.
I'm
Yeah.
excited.
And it's for all the 16-year-old nerdy girls who went on summer vacation and got crushes on the 19-year-old lifeguard. This is not my personal experience. And then, of course, if the lifeguard takes them for ice cream some night, that's it. So this is to Elliot, the lifeguard. Hey there, Elliot. It's me, that girl from the resort. I meant to ask you just one question. If I revealed to you the many thoughts of you I have entertained while wishing they were part of a conversation in which you confess to having many thoughts of me, would we benefit from such honesty, or is it better for the possibilities to remain a dream and allow reality to march on undisturbed, preserving my dignity, avoiding the disappointment of mistaken assumptions and the pain of loss that would overtake me if I knew without doubt that this undercurrent is flowing in just one direction? From Nan.
Aww. Well, that is very sweet and very fun at the same time.
And I love the energy in the reading. I was right there. Yeah.
Well, it needs to be a rushed question. I didn't know if I could do it. But it was fun to write it.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it was Nancy Tennell with To Elliot, the lifeguard.
It's cute to think of all the summer crushes out there.
Oh, I know.
Aw.
Yeah. Aw. Okay. Next up is Stephen Croft.
Hey, Tim and Katie.
Hey, Stephen. Great to see you.
Thank you. My postcard is going to need extra postage because, like Dick's, mine's going outside the U.S. It's going to Purgatory, and it's going to be oversized because it's Zachary Honeycutt length. So this is to Ernest in Purgatory from Steve in Key West. Your ego heavy and staggering. There was that time you punched Wallace Stevens down into a puddle over on Waddell Street, fist defending Penn after his literary slight. You hung your marlin down at the wharf so tourists could marvel at the exploits of Papa. If you could pass a letter through Peter, even the infinite one might be impressed, let you ascend. Your writing is why we love you, always will. But the saint can't be bribed, like Pilar, for the right reasons, to save Maria. So there you remain, hard drinker, faithless husband, American letters, boastous with the mostest, until James Dickey came along to try your rep, maybe best you say hi to Jim for me. That time in the Second War, despite your famous novel of the first, You raced ahead of the Third Army to Paris, tossed a grenade into a basement nest of SS, took command of the village's French resistance for days, lied to the Third Army's later inquiry into your contraventions of the Geneva Conventions, and there were many. By taking up arms as a wartime journalist, the officers officially accepted your denials, unofficially wished they could give you a medal. Yes, you killed, but for arguably good reasons. Here at your house, the docent says, don't pick up the cats, then emphasizes, don't pick up the cats. 15 minutes later, I pick one up, calmly pinch jaw hinges to free a green lizard into a bush. The cat now follows me everywhere, swishing between my legs. Now that they can't be held, your cats especially miss you, you who could love so grandly when you loved. I am here, a cat's tail figuring my legs, rooting for you there. We all are. Steve.
Oh, really great, Steve. I love the movement to the cats and the way you expand that story. It worked really well. Yeah, really touching. Yeah. And then kind of the personal comes through in this style. Yeah.
Right. And I actually did pick up a cat at the Hemingway house. So that's true.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was Stephen Croft with To Ernest in Purgatory.
I would have picked up the cat too.
Yeah, you can't really. I mean,
save the cat.
Yeah, definitely. Like you saved the duck earlier today.
Oh yeah, the baby ducks.
Yeah.
You have to say something about that. You can't just say.
Well, these teenage boys.
We were playing pickleball, and teenage boys came up, and they were like acting like they were going to catch these baby ducks, and I guilt tripped them out of it.
You did. You used your psychological persuasion skills. They left.
Mean
they were
teenager
like,
boys. They left. Yeah.
And the little duck is still swimming in that pond.
I know. They're happy.
Let's go next to Nivedita.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi. Yeah, great to see you.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Great.
So mine's kind of a weird poem. It's about destiny or kismet, and in Hindu mythology, the god of fate or destiny is Brahma, who is considered our creator. Usually his job is done as soon as he finishes creating, and he's supposed to write your fate on your forehead as he's creating you. So the reason that it's strange is that nobody ever wishes to talk to him after they created, because his job is technically done.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I love that backstory.
Yeah, really interesting.
So the three main gods for us are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the creator, preserver, and destroyer. So it sort of maintains balance that way. Dear Lord Brahma, I once naively believed time moved along a linear trajectory. No longer so. I accepted that every action has a consequence that follows. Ever thought about how the after effects are sometimes the origin? I see myself in thoughts of the past and dream of myself in the future. Stare at my mistakes and applaud my successes. A spectator, then, now, and always, corralled into accepting this version of me. The steely gossamer strands of your web envelop me in a lover's embrace. Always entwined, I remain, a marionette in your implacable hands. Forever yours, Nivi.
Yeah, well, very interesting poem. A great place to take the prompt. Thanks for sharing that, Nivi.
Thank you. Thank you for the prompt.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Yep, have a good day.
Thank you.
This is Nivedita Karthik with Dear Lord Brahma. Next up is Steve Horrell.
Hi there.
Hey, Steve, good to see you.
Good to be here. Number one, that interview with Kat was incredible.
Oh, great. Yeah, well,
Just
I hope there's
great.
so much to learn
And-
from the form, and Kat pushes it really far.
Yeah.
So a lot to learn from that. Yeah.
And number two, I thought immediately, oh, great. I wrote a postcard poem. And then I realized it had been read on Rattle a while ago because it was a poem respond. So I thought, well, I can't do that again. It's already been done. So I thought, well, I'll probably just skip it. And then I dreamt two parallel poems, postcard poems, and I even called it Twofer. And when I woke up, I didn't remember any of it. So anyway, I wrote this, which was one of the parallel ones, but it's not written that same way. Anyway, it's called Summer of '68. Knowing I would be gone by fall, you arrived with 2 suitcases, a very young poet. We ignored the departure, spent the time exploring each other's tenderness. Never said the word goodbye. Linda Jones, there is a place time never enters. You are blonde and 17 forever.
Well, that's great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Summer of '68, did you say it was? Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Steve. Yeah, great trip down memory lane. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Steve Horrell with Summer of '68. Let's go to Laura Berg next.
Hello. I'm so interested to hear these. I was really had a difficult time at first thinking also about who to write to. So it's been fun to hear how everybody solved the puzzle.
Yeah, definitely has. For me, it was a trickier one than normal because you had to pick like ahead of time. Yeah.
So here's mine. Dear Firefly, are the postcards you write ever just for yourself? Your flash perceived not by your intended, but another? Your spark the one that quickens all the others, all of you looping in each other's light? And what if it goes unread, a lighthouse among no boats? Yet when you left, the darkness felt bereft. Love, Laura.
Oh, yeah, that's
I
wonderful.
like that lighthouse metaphor. That's really nice.
Yeah, too. And the opening question and then closing it that way.
Yeah.
Just great, sweet little poem. Thanks for sharing that, Laura.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Laura Berg with Dear Firefly. Next up is Chelsea McGlynn.
Hello.
Hey, Chelsea, it's been a few weeks. Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a stressful and busy couple of weeks, but found out that I was not laid off from my job, so that's been great.
Well, that's definitely good. Yeah, that's great to hear.
So my postcard, I took this picture at Gettysburg. I went there a few weeks ago and found this bouquet of flowers just scattered on one of the rocks there. So I have an erasure poem to the boulders at Devil's Den, Gettysburg. And I found out after listening to this interview that I can read this poem 2 ways. So here's the 2 different ways. Here my flesh lamented, I was human. Here my flesh lamented, I was human.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's a great sort of monoku erasure. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, and a postcard from Gettysburg. Thanks so much for sharing that, Chelsea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad things are settling down too. Hope to see you next week.
Me too.
Great. Yeah, great. That was Chelsea McGlynn with a postcard poem to the builders at Devil's Den, Gettysburg. Yeah, very cool. All right, next in line is Hemant Malik.
Hi.
Hey, Hemant, great to see you.
You too. Thank you. I keep saying I'm going to write something light, and it's always heavy. I'm sorry. Even my computer switched off. Didn't want me to read it.
No.
Okay. Sorry. At least I'm picking on someone else now. It's not my poor ex-husband. Okay. Wish you were here. Hell no. Father, I know you're dead, but I did want to write to you before we meet again, in case I can't avoid you in the afterlife. All the photos you were in have been trimmed, so I chose this picture of a cliff by an ocean in a storm. And don't read this with a saintly look on that face you used to charm women who weren't yours. I still see naive in my mother's eyes, from mine which have narrowed into slits. I've had to sit with people, stunned at your sins. At 23 in Mum's lounge room, the official showing me the papers for the car you put in my name, the signature that wasn't mine, the copies of outstanding fines. I did my best to explain the father that you were. But I have a daughter too, he said, as he wandered back to his car. My face scorched as another told me you took his copier with you when you left his office, still owing the rent. He couldn't buy what I was selling with his bitter coins. And then others who didn't mind. The girl my age, but in a nicer dress, with a pretty mum, calling you daddy at the party you took me to. He's my father, not yours, I blubbered in that dark room with high ceilings. She shrugged and chewed a lolly I didn't have, with her mouth open. Father, was it unworthy you were feeding, stuffing other people's things into that gaping hole? Mine sits empty. Its echoes sound like giggles when people are around. Come to think of it, I doubt we'll meet again.
Yeah, a really powerful poem there.
Yeah, it really is.
As so often it is. And that the turn of the scene there with the girl my age coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, really moving.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Okay, it was Hamid Malik with I guess Hell No was the title, or Wish You Were Here, Hell No. I also love, I have to say, the non-standard size hand delivery
off
only.
To the right to be sure that, yeah. Hand deliver only. Yeah, too.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Hamid.
Thank you.
All right, and next up is Tina Denniclaw.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey, Tina. Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you guys, and good to see Brian. So I'm like really late to catching on for these things. I wrote two poems that didn't fit but I enjoyed writing them. So here I had to suddenly write something, and I guess it's just that I'm just a literal concrete person, because it seems like I can only really write about experiences. I tried to do something that was fanciful in one of the other ones, and it just turned out pretty dark. It's about monsters. But any rate, so this is actually really a tribute to my high school biology teacher, who's the first person who told me I could do science. And so at any rate, I need to make it bigger so I can read it. He was quite a character, and I hope that comes through in the poem. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, you sang at your desk, grading papers, gathering brewer's yeast, propionic acid, and potato starch at your blacktop counter. Nobody bother me, I'm cooking. The tempest in your beaker didn't match the tempest of your wit. Compact body, as quick and strong as your mind. You were a scary referee for girls' basketball. Your guillotine hand made other teams cry. You kept me after class once to show me the magic of base pairs in a DNA helix. I studied the chalk drawing, then reached forward to touch a line. You fell silent and looked at me, eye to eye. You opened the corridor for my future and showed me that I can expect respect. Eye to eye has served me well.
Oh, well, that's great. And I hope, yeah.
I'm sure that would mean so much to him.
It definitely would, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he is such a character, but yeah, he really did treat his students like his children. It was wonderful. And really, he owned, when he was refereeing on the basketball court, he was the show. He was the show on the court. It was so funny. And people would stop and just, So, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's so great, Tina. And it is. I mean, the way that the teachers can change people's lives is just unparalleled. And it happens so often, and it goes unnoticed so often, too. So great to put that into a poem.
Yeah. Without him, I would not have been taking chemistry. I wouldn't have met my husband. I mean, everything came from that.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Tina.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's Tina Denetclaw to Mr. Cantrell, Biology. Let's go to Brian O'Sullivan next.
Hello.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, great to see you.
Great to see you too. And I really enjoyed Tina's poem just now a lot. I really admire the way it reaches into personal experience and memory, like so many of the poems tonight. And I have kind of the opposite problem to what Tina described, because every time you give us a poem that kind of invites us to be personal and intimate, I make it from the voice of someone else. So I did the opposite of Dick this time and wrote it from God instead of to God. But anyway, here it is. It's called No in Thunder. Wish you were here. That's an order. I ordain that you wish that you were here. If I wished it, then you would always already have been here in non-daemonium. Saying so might be called a strange flex in these weary latter days of earth. But I do not flex, I simply am. And I tell, I am the truth. Lucifer, son of my short breath before the word, may you be glorified. May you always have been glorified as the necessary rebel. And may your fall always have glorified my law. Odor of dawn, morning start, return to sender. Like so many postcards, it has a footnote. In an 1851 letter to Nathaniel Hawthorne, Melville wrote, there is the grand truth about Nathaniel Hawthorne. He says no in thunder, but the devil himself cannot make him say yes. Well, I had to say where the quote was coming from.
Yeah, that was a great quote. Love that use in the title. Great haiku at the end, too.
So, Brian, you're officially writing a chapbook, at least, of godlike poems at this point, right? You don't even have to confirm that. Like, I will confirm that.
Okay. I'll accept that.
Well, very fun as always. Thanks so much for sharing that, Brian. Yeah, Brian O'Sullivan with No in Thunder. Yes.
You should have read that more forcefully.
No in thunder.
Oh.
All right, yeah, Brian O'Sullivan. Thanks, Brian. Let's see. Oh, we have Jeremy McKay next.
My connectivity is not that good, so I don't know about the video.
All right. Well, yeah,
we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. So let's keep it like this then. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was in the Navy for a long time, and every time I left a place, I would promise someone that I would send them a note or something. And this is someone who I promised I would send a postcard to in 1976.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So it's been a while, but if I sent it today, this is what it would say.
Oh, great.
Bring it up. Postcard promise. Conrad. Camping with my wife in Idlewild. I remember you asked me to let you know how this marriage worked out. We're still together, more compatible than when we first met 49 years ago. You advised me against it. I'll never know. Was it a challenge I stubbornly met, or do you expect the relationship to flop? In any case, just trying to keep that postcard promise. Take care, your shipmate, Jeremy.
Oh, yeah, sweet. That was really sweet. An unexpected love poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Jeremy McKay with a postcard promise. Yeah. And next, let's go to, I think, a first-time caller. And I'm sorry, I usually do first-time callers sooner, but I didn't notice until toward the end. Chase Troxel is here. Hey, Chase, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me all right?
I can, yeah. Hi. Thanks so much for being here. Where are you calling from?
Findlay, Ohio.
Great. And we don't have video if you want to turn it on, but it's fine if you don't.
Yeah, so I had a webcam that I had never used, and apparently it doesn't work, so I'm sorry.
Oh, well, that's
I'll
all right.
try to
No
get
problem.
that fixed.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad to have you here. And, great to have your poems. Thanks for joining.
Absolutely. May I go ahead and begin?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so this one is cleverly, can't say that word, intelligently called a postcard. Very, very witty, I see. I know the tagline says, I wish you were here, but such formality is really a lie, a ruse, an enigma. I do not want you here in this space I occupy or even next to it. I want you behind my eyes and in my mind. I want you to see as I would see, be as I would be in this place and time. I want our souls to be entwined, too bare to hide, too real to be drowned by the smell of dying leaves and taste of bitter air, or the lingering touch of strangers sharing the same bigness of an expanding universe. I want the littleness of knowing we are all one, and alone we are the intimacy of two, sets our spirits ablaze with intensity rivaled only by an exploding star. I am not wishing you here as much as I am wishing you could bond and be as I am. A wanderer who found hurt and love transcends time and place, and no place is the same when your face is memory, when your face is the earth, the clouds, and the stars of me. I wish you were here where we could share in the glory of two becoming one, and that's not less, it's more. I wish you were here. It's true.
Oh, really fascinating take and voice in that poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Chase.
Sure thing.
Yeah, it was Chase Troxel, and I hope you come back and share more, Chase. It was great to have.
And good luck with the webcam in the future, too.
Yeah, definitely.
You can get it.
Yeah, it was Chase Troxel with a postcard. And let's see, is that everybody? Yeah, that's everybody on the Zoom. Let's see if, of course, Ted Bernal Guevara's got a postcard for us. Of course, it's asking for just an image with a postcard cover. Mm-hmm. And here is a woman bathing in a lake kind of deal, right?
Yes.
Oh, you're supposed to describe this
Her
art
hairstyle
now.
almost looks like, I mean, we can't see anything in the front. It almost looks geisha-like, her hairstyle, I would say.
Interesting. Okay. And then here's the poem. All that can fit on a postcard to a coworker dying young. Yesterday, early is not your strong point, neither is time. I should have kept my lust quiet. Honesty has boundaries. Now that you're gone, I should have talked bright of tomorrow instead. Left my feelings out. Oh, it's a sad poem to a coworker dying young. Thanks for sharing that, Ted. All that can be fit on a postcard by Ted Bernal Guevara. Let's see. And that's going to wrap up the show for today. Let's go to the haiku. And the haiku this week is the following. So we went to Phoenix, as we mentioned, with a little visiting a doctor and having some fun times, too. Mm-hmm. One of the places we went to is the Botanical Garden in Phoenix. And I wrote a bunch of haiku about that. And this is the one that's stuck, exciting. I think. Okay, this is the one I'm sharing. Trailing the mother quail, her laughter.
Aww.
It was really cute watching, Charlotte love the quail so
and the
much.
Baby quail. She really did, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the trailing the mother quail, her laughter. That is our haiku of the day, and that is the show for today. What is your prompt next week, Katie?
The prompt is going to be, everyone's going to be real shocked by this prompt, I know.
What are you doing?
Write a different kind of hyphen than you have ever before that features a big leap. So I knew obviously the discussion you had with Kat was going to play into this heavily, but it played into it even more than I could have predicted, with Kat really talking about how structure to her is the fourth element of hyphen and how the structure of a hyphen only needs to fit that one single hyphen, not every hyphen written thereafter. So I hope we have a lot of fun with this and challenge ourselves. Now, challenge for me is going to be finding a type of hyphen I haven't written before. I also want to discourage people from just, say, putting the poem in a concrete shape that they've never written before and counting that, even if it technically counts. Try to really push yourself with this, because I think we can have a lot of fun because we've written a lot of hyphen together so far.
Well, that's true. Yeah. And Kat definitely pushes, so a great example there.
Yeah,
look back at some of hers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And even some of the ones, if you look at like contemporary hyphen online, we mentioned Rich Yeomans is going to be the guest in a few weeks. So he's the editor of that. There's a lot of really interesting hyphen there that push the boundaries of what
really
hyphen
excellent.
can do.
Kat
So
has
check
essays there she's written that I've read that are excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to pushing ourselves to write even more experimentally with hyphen this next week.
Well, sounds good. Great prompt. That's looking forward to that next week. And next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Matt Mason. Now, Matt Mason's been on a few issues of Rattle. He's a wonderful poet, really down to earth, great sense of humor, interesting person. He's the poet laureate of Nebraska. His most recent book is Rock Stars, with that parental advisory.
Oh, nice.
Warning on there. I like the cover.
Yeah.
He's also got a version of that book that's in the CD shape.
Wow,
square
cool.
I saw, but I picked the one that was vertical because it makes more sense with our art. But yeah, Matt Mason is a really wonderful poet and a fan of Rattle, and it's great to talk to him and get to know him better. Just performance poetry too, as well as really down to earth poems that have a good sense of humor. That's Matt Mason, number 296 of the Rattlecast. Your poems, your Haibin that are different kinds than you ever have written before, that features a big leap.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be next week's episode, Rattlecast 296, Sunday, June 8th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime. We'll talk to you then. Goodbye.
Bye.